had me a little problem I had to take care of. But anyways, Judges chapter 15, verse 3. And Samson said concerning them, Now shall I be more blameless than the Philistines, though I do them a displeasure. And note, in other words, he's saying, my revenge is actually a just one. And Samson went and caught 300 foxes, or jackals it should have been translated, and took firebrands and turned tail to tail and put a firebrand in the midst between two tails. And when he had set the brands on fire, he let them go into the standing wheat of the Philistines and burnt up both the shocks and also the standing corn with the vineyards and olives. Notes, well, the word corn here should actually be translated wheat, but anyways, this caused probably considerable damage, and no doubt it's going to get some really negative attention. Verse 6. Then the Philistines said, Who has done this? And they answered, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he had taken his wife and given her to his companion. And the Philistines came up and burnt her and her father with fire. Notes. Now, as stated, they little knew, so to speak, as to exactly who in the world they were fooling with. And there's fixing to be problems, big-time problems. Verse 7. And Samson said unto them, Though you have done this, yet will I be avenged of you, and after that I will cease. Note, he's talking about they killed his wife and her father. In essence, if this is the way you treat me, be sure that I will not cease until I have had my full revenge on you. Samson's not dilly-dallying around. Verse 8. And he smote them hip and thigh with a great slaughter, and he went down and dwelt in the top of the rock Etam. Okay? Notes. Now, the believers who are listening to my voice may wonder how the Lord could be in all of these things. However, it must be understood that Israel was at an extremely low state at this particular time, and in fact, I think it can be said that Samson, for all of his weaknesses, was the best of the lot. In a sense, Samson was a type of Christ, at least as it regards his victories. These victories represent the Lord overcoming every enemy, all of it on our behalf. Verse 9. Then the Philistines went up and pitched in Judah and spread themselves in Lehi. And the men of Judah said, Why are you come up against us? And they answered, To bind Samson are we come up, to do to him as he has done to us. Verse 11. Then 3,000 men of Judah went to the top of the rock of Etam, and said to Samson, Know you not that the Philistines are rulers over us? What is this that you have done unto us? And he said unto them, As they did unto me, so have I done unto them. Notes. The language of these cowardly men portrays the fact as to how completely the Philistine yoke was fastened around the necks of these Judahs, or around the necks of Judah. The opposition of the world is bitter to the Nazarite Christian, but the opposition of the church is even more bitter. The Philistines ruled over Israel, and Israel was content to have it so. They did not wish to have a Nazarite in their midst who would disturb their peace and excite the world against them. They were quite ready to hand Samson over to a cruel death in order to maintain their so-called peace. Now, this condition of spiritual degradation marks and has marked the history of the Christian church. Instead of hailing the Samsons of our world as a deliverer, the Israelites treated him as if he was the enemy. Believers are very quick to talk about the problems of Samson, but very seldom mention the leaders of Israel who were in far worse condition. Okay? Verse 12. And they said unto him, We are come down to bind you, that we may deliver you into the hand of the Philistines. And Samson said unto them, Swear unto me that you will not fall upon me yourselves. Notes. Now, the evidence is pointing to that they had agreed with the Philistines that if they could deliver Samson to them, the Philistines would not start the war. Well, the truth is they didn't care that much about Samson, and neither did they care about the will of the Lord. They sought only to appease the world, which is the attitude of most of the modern church, okay? Verse 13. And they spoke unto him, saying, No, but we will bind you fast and deliver you into their hand, but surely we will not kill you. And they bound him with 2 new cords and brought him up from the rock. Notes. Well, they seem to think that they have their little problem solved, but it's not going to work out quite that well. Verse 14. And when he came unto Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the cords that were upon his arms became as flax that was burnt with fire, and his hands, or his bands, loosed from off his hands. And he found a new jawbone of an ass, and put forth his hand, and took it, and killed 1,000 men therewith. Notes. By far, this was the mightiest achievement to date. As stated, Israel could have, well, they should have helped him, and in fact, had they done so, they would have been delivered from the Philistine yoke at that moment. But they were so far away from God that they were quite satisfied with having that yoke around their necks. They reasoned that their situation was not nearly so bad as it had been under other conquerors, so they would live with this problem, and they didn't want Samson rocking the boat. Now, that sounds a lot like the modern believers nowadays. They're satisfied to live under the dominion of the devil himself, providing it doesn't get too bad. So when they hear the message of the cross, which is the only means of deliverance, then, by and large, they shrug it off, thinking that such is not necessary for them. They know of others who desperately need the message of the cross, but they never put themselves in the same category. Well, at best, such Christians are of no use to the kingdom of God, and at worst, they actually end up losing their selves. Verse 16. And Samson said, With the jawbone of an ass, heaps upon heaps, with the jaw of an ass have I slain 1,000 men. Notes. Now, this is probably a song of some kind that he's wrote. Anyways, verse 17. And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking, that he cast away the jawbone out of his hand, and called that place Ramath-Lehi. Notes. The meaning is the castaway of the jawbone, referring to the fact that the jawbone had no special qualities at all, but rather that this was carried out by the Spirit of God. Had he not thrown away this item, Israel would have probably worshipped the thing. And as such is the human heart, and I do believe that that is God's reason for taking Moses out and burying him out in the middle of the wilderness where no one could find him. This very person that they began to hate and despise, they would have quickly have worshipped as a deity. And where are we? Verse 17. Okay, verse 18. And he was sore athirst, and he called on the Lord and said, You have given this great deliverance into the hand of your servant, and now shall I die for thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? Notes. You may actually notice from this that the more God gives, the more he encourages us to actually ask him. Verse 19, But God clave an hollow place that was in the jaw, and there came water thereout, and when he had drunk, his spirit came again, and he revived. Wherefore he called the name thereof En-Hakkore, which is in Lehi unto this day. Notes. Now, this hollow place is probably a rock, and it opened up where he had thrown the jawbone. Now, this word En-Hakkore, it means the well of him who called or cried. You can find that also mentioned in Psalms chapter 34, verse 6. Verse 20. And he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. And we must pick up in chapter 16 of the book of Judges. Thank you, and God bless.